muted.
Okay. What you see on your screen right now is the home page or the opening page for the voucher management system. For those of you that have been with Access to Recovery for a long time, you know that this grant requires that each state has a voucher management system, which is a management tool that allows us to enroll clients and process electronic vouchers from the care coordination to the provider. Once I get the okay from the local ATM boards, from the providers, that are okay to get sign-ons, the next step is that we're going to have you log into the ADA, PROD ADA system, the voucher management turnstile system, and then you'll have access to Recovery. Everyone should have access to Recovery. We're asking that each agency has a provider access and a fiscal approver access. Once you get access and you're able to sign on, this is the first screen that you'll see. You would log on to the left, but I'm going to log on to the right. When you log on, you're going to be asked to select your desired environment. That will be production. And then you're going to be asked some challenge questions for security reasons to make sure that this is you. I have a lot of sign-ons, and many of you may, because you may have access to this turnstile already. But I'm going to select Access to Recovery. That's what you would select. And this looks like what your home screen would look like. We are going to use more counseling as the example for this home screen demonstration. But on the home screen, you'll see at the top what agency we have selected, and I'll show you how to select. You'll click down on the first drop-down button. You'll only see the agencies and addresses that are under your sign-on. You're going to see much more on this screen because I have the sign-on for everything. You would click yourself, choose your location as a benefit coordinator. We're starting at the very top. We're starting by enrolling a client. You would enter as a benefit coordinator, and then you would enroll a new participant. Under the new enrollment, you would select the county. You would select who your benefit coordinator is, and I'm just going to select myself. You would put in the individual Social Security number. I put in a dummy number, and we'll be erasing these so that you don't, if somebody's Social Security number is actually that number. You would put in a UCI number because all of these clients would be engaged in a treatment center, so they all would have a UCI number. You would put in their first name, and I'm going to use myself, their last name, and fill out the information. As is instructed. If it's not in the right format, it will let you know. You would put in the home phone number and the cell phone number. There are some questions about whether the individual is a veteran. If they are a veteran, they would self-disclose to you. You would ask the question, it's either yes or no. If it's a yes, did they participate in Operation Enduring Freedom? Yes or no. Did you participate in Operation Iraq Freedom? Yes or no. And are you currently deployed, a deployed member of the National Guard? Yes or no. You would answer those questions and click Next. The automatic date that you're enrolling the person is automatically populated. You would put in next of kin information, their name. How about I put that name? You would put in also the next of kin's phone number. We keep track of where we're receiving referrals. So you would select a referral source. There's referral sources in here that are populated, but if there is none, I'm going to show you how to add one. Either you would populate and click one of the sources, or you would add your own source. And click Save. And then when you go back to click the source, the state of Ohio would be there as the source. Maybe at the bottom. There you go. We do keep track of where people are coming from. Eligibility for the Access to Recovery Grant requires that individuals have a substance use disorder diagnosis. You would verify that from the assessment that you received, and you would put in the DSM-4 diagnostic code for their primary diagnosis and or secondary diagnosis. You would put in the current treatment provider and the address of that current treatment provider, and I'm going to use a test address for that. You would put in the current dates of their last treatment episode, and maybe they were in treatment yesterday, so I'm going to use yesterday's date. Okay, maybe that's not. Maybe I'm not doing the right format, so let me try that again. Oh, my numbers is locked. There you go. 4. That would either be a, let's see if it'll take a date spread out or if it's automatically a date that you would put in by numeric format. You would also verify that the individual has had criminal justice involvement, what level of criminal justice involvement they've had. You would ask the question if the individual was incarcerated in the past 30 days. If they were incarcerated, you would identify when they were incarcerated by opening up the calendar pop-up, and this should work. The calendar pop-up should work on everybody's format but mine. There's an internal glitch that doesn't allow me to use the calendar pop-up, but you would be able to use that and choose the date. Otherwise, you can always type the date in. We used to serve adolescents. This question will be going away, but based on the birth date of the individual, it automatically lets you know if that person's an adolescent. This can be a check and balance. If somebody gives you a birth date and they're not 18 years of age, that would pop up yes, and that would let you know that the person is ineligible for ATR until they're 18 years of age. Is the person financially eligible? Yes. You would check their financial eligibility against the poverty guidelines. We'll be sending you a spreadsheet of the poverty guidelines if you don't otherwise have them, but they're the same poverty guidelines that are used across the state of Ohio. If that person has a parole or a probation officer, you would put the name of the probation officer here and the contact information for that probation officer. If the person is not on parole or any post-release control, you would click this button here. If they are, you would not click that button. Is the client interested in relocating to a different county when they are being referred to a housing service? There may be a time when there's an open opportunity for recovery housing in an adjacent county. As long as that is an ATR county, then the voucher can go to the adjacent county. But in this case, we're going to click no. This is where you input into the system the information that you receive directly from the biosocial assessment. You would put the initial date of the assessment in the system if it's not the same date that's automatically populated. The instructions here, just as a reminder to let you know that please refer to the client's assessment and select the level of care rating for each listed. Number 2, check the appropriate service in the ATR category. There's a couple of things I want to make note of on this screen. You'll see that the client has a specific unique identification number. That number is the number that we will use to communicate about the client. We will never put the client's information or name in an email. We'll communicate specifically based on that ID number. You would take the assessment and you would go through each domain and identify what the domain said. We're going to use low for all of this for training purposes. Then you would look at the ATR service that's offered that's appropriate with that domain. So if this domain was high, then the ATR service for the active military personnel would be outpatient or intensive outpatient. Right now, no treatment indicated. Number 2, it's also low. The ATR services in this field, we are going to adjust. Unless we have a provider in your area that provides HIV/AIDS education, then you would click this box if you do. If you don't, you would not click that box. Dimension 3, we're going to click no. If there's an anger management provider, you would click that box. Dimension 4, you would rate low or whatever the diagnostic assessment says, but for training purposes, again, we're going to rate low. And if there's a domestic violence batter service signed up under ATR, you would click that box. All of those services would be signed up under daily living. Daily living / anger management, daily living / HIV/AIDS, or daily living / domestic violence batter service. Dimension 5, we're going to click low for training purposes, and then you would just select from the list here of the services that that individual would need. Relapse prevention is one of those services that would be under daily living / relapse prevention, but all of the other services are services. So you could click any of these services. Dimension 6, we're going to use low as the rating scale just for training purposes, and any of the services under Dimension 6 you would be able to click, and those would be the services that you would think that that client, in conversation with that client, would need. Dimension 7, this one is for adolescents only, so all of these would be low. We're going to be taking Dimension 7 out of the system shortly, but right now on Dimension 7, just don't put anything. It'll automatically go to, oh, NA, perfect. Let's use NA until we can remove it from the system. That's a legacy from the previous ATR grant when we did serve adolescents, but since we're no longer serving adolescents, NA is appropriate. The reporting questions, there's a couple questions that we ask. If the client is a heroin user, was he or she addicted to opiates before heroin? Yes or no, or NA. The special consideration question, this question is specifically for if one of the rating scales on the assessment doesn't match the services that you're wanting to offer, then you would give an explanation as to why. It could be that the assessment was done a while ago because ATR will accept an assessment that's up to 12 months old, and the circumstances of the individual has changed. That's the only time you would have to use the special consideration. The next screen, as you're enrolling a client into the voucher management system as a benefit coordinator, is now you're going to assign services to the participant. You're going to click the service category. We're going to click recovery housing. We'll be adding recovery housing to the drop-down box. I see it's not there now because that's the service we clicked on the previous screen. But for today, we're going to click recovery coaching. The type of service is recovery support individual. And we're going to choose providers that are signed up under the ATR system. So you would put the zip code of that's closest to where the individual is residing. What comes up is more counseling. They provide recovery coaching. It's at $25 an hour. The remaining amount that they have to issue is $7,940. For the care coordinator, that's important because keep in mind, as you're calculating the needs of the client, you're going to have to know how much each provider has left available. So if they did not have any money available, then that individual provider would not be a good choice because they wouldn't have the appropriate money left for you to create a voucher. So that remaining to issue is there for the care coordinator to see, so they know that there's enough money remaining in More Counseling's account for them to create an appropriate voucher. You would click More Counseling. The contact information is listed, the address is listed, and then the service name of the voucher is listed, the description, the agency provides recovery coaching, please contact the agency for details. Each description may be different for each provider. We put those descriptions in the system based on what the provider has given us to put in the system. You would select the service date and start date. You could do it by using this calendar to the right, but my system doesn't allow me to use that calendar today. So I'm going to just click in the date. And today's date is the 6th, so we're going to use today's date. Service end date. ATR vouchers can be no longer than 90 days old. They can be no longer than 90 days old. And so 90 days from November 6th is, let's try January 6th. And I think I have to have a 0 in front of that. Available beds is a recovery housing. If you're choosing recovery housing, we calculate how many open vouchers there are based on the number of beds that we have approved through Access to Recovery. So one provider, if they're approved for 5 beds, and they have 5 open vouchers, then you could not open up another voucher for them. So that's what available beds is. The base rate of the services here, the remaining amount for More Counseling in their account is listed for you. And then you calculate the amount in units. So how many hours will you want this individual to have of recovery coaching? We're going to say 15 hours. You click calculate the cost. That's going to be $375. So I'm going to go back and calculate a little bit more. Until we get to the $1,000. There we go, 40 units. You can calculate any number of units. The purpose of this calculating cost is if you know that the individual has decided on 2 or 3 services, you would already in your head separate those services out so that you know I can only give More Counseling $300 of the $1,000. I could only give provider 2 $300 of the $1,000. And then on provider 3, you would give them the remaining money. Once you calculate the cost, you would push continue. End date cannot be less than the start date. So I put the wrong year.
January. Yeah.
Yes. The next thing you do is you contact More Counseling. And you contact More Counseling to set up an appointment for the individual that you're sending that has chosen More Counseling as a provider. So as a care coordinator, benefit coordinator, you would call More Counseling and say, I have this client has chosen your program. What's an appropriate date for that client to come in? We're going to leave today's date, and we're going to set the appointment from 1 to 1:30. The purpose is new participant. If you cannot get a hold of the provider, you can still set the appointment date based on the schedule of the individual client. You would put your notes in, if there are any notes that the provider needs to know, and you would create appointment. If by chance this voucher is a repeat voucher or this voucher is a voucher that's already been opened that you're adjusting, you can skip the appointment. If the person doesn't need an appointment because the provider actually walked the person in and the provider's there with the person, they won't need an appointment. And you can skip if you're unable to contact the provider. If you are unable to contact the provider on a repeat basis, please let us know. You would assign services. You would assign the second service to the client if you need to, the same way you assign the first service. But down below, there are 2 vouchers. There's actually 4 vouchers that will automatically populate. They're not populating today because we're still in the process of updating the system. But the first voucher for a care coordinator, it's already automatically going to populate that intake voucher. It's going to populate your follow-up voucher that you see here. And it's going to identify the provider. More Counseling for today's purposes is both the benefit coordinator and the provider, because that's the only provider we currently have loaded into the system. It would identify the benefit coordinating agency, and then it would identify the provider agency. The other 2 vouchers that will populate are the benefit coordinator discharge, the GIPRA discharge voucher, and there's 4. Let me check.
Checkup and
Checkup, the recovery checkup voucher. So automatically it will populate the benefit coordinator intake, benefit coordinator follow-up, the benefit coordinator discharge, and the recovery checkup voucher. That way, it automatically takes that money out of the account so that that money is available for the care coordinating agency to bill upon once the services are rendered. The benefit coordinator will see where the vouchers, the provider vouchers are. It shows the start date, the end date of the voucher, the unit, and how much the voucher is, and who the voucher is going to. If you're done assigning services, that's all the vouchers that person needs. You would finish assigning services. And then you would go directly to entering in the intake GIPRA. I'm not going to go through this entire intake GIPRA, but the intake GIPRA, you will be trained on how to do it. We will be sending out some links for you as care coordinators to be trained on the skip patterns, because there are skip patterns with GIPRA. We also are coordinating with another grant to see if we can provide face-to-face training. But in the meantime, we will be sending out a link where there is an online training for the GIPRA tool. We have hired a new GIPRA coordinator, and he is being trained next week on how to administer the tool, and he will be a resource for you as you're working through this GIPRA tool. Would I be able to bill for this person if I hadn't finished the GIPRA tool, Billy?
I believe so.
Okay.
You have some clients in there that are already finished with this.
Okay. So then after you finish inputting the GIPRA tool, you would click Finish. And there's probably an error message because I didn't, yes, there's error messages because I didn't answer any of the questions. But as you're answering the questions and inputting the tool, then if you have an error message, it tells you exactly where you're missing information. Okay. Now for the, that's the end of the initial role of the benefit coordinator when enrolling a person into the voucher management system. Next, we're going to look at what do I do as a provider. So we're going to go back to More Counseling, and she's a provider. I want to show you what a provider sees. First, let's go through up at the top. There's your home button. It'll take you back to your home screen. Your client button, if you hover over that, it shows you all of the clients that are enrolled in your particular provider agency. You can look at all clients, active clients, inactive clients, or clients that have been discharged. Billing records will show you any billing records that you have submitted, and you can log out in that particular button. On the darker blue bar, or gray, Request User Information Change List If there is some information in the system that you see is incorrect, you can click that button and you can request that information to be changed. There are times when Social Security numbers or other information is incorrectly entered by mistake, and this way it's a verifying way for you to request that information to be changed. You can look at all of your vouchers, your client contacts, your client service plans, your incident reports, this invoices, and I won't click those down because there's nothing in there today, but the invoices, remember I told everybody that when you receive payment from our fiscal department, that payment automatically, that invoice will automatically be loaded to your home page, and this is where it would be loaded under invoices. And then the program rates for what you have in the system. I will click that one because it's there. Right now you see there's a lot of things entered in the system for more counseling. Most of them are false because we no longer do those services, and some of them are true because those are services that are currently active. I'm going to go back home, and I'm going to go back in here again because you have to go in for the first time to see some of the other information I want to talk about. Okay, the allocated amount information, as a provider, you'll always see the amount that the state has allocated to you. You will see the amount that has been issued in open vouchers to you. You will see the amount that's remaining to issue, and you will see the amount that we've paid out. So you always know where you are with the funding that's been allocated. There's some keys to kind of identify what the definitions are of these four categories. The second thing you'll see is the estimated dates for billing records approved by the providers. This calendar here is the ATR provider payment schedule. We only updated it from November 1st to January to see how the calendar works and how accurately we've captured the time frame from you submitting your billing to you getting paid. So what this calendar means as from a provider perspective is from November 1st to November 14th, any services that you rendered during that time need to be submitted into our system and approved by your fiscal coordinator by November 17th, by 5 p.m. on November 17th. The ATR fiscal coordinator will come in on Monday morning, process the payments, and then the estimated time that your payments would be received in your bank account is November 30th. And then every 2 weeks we have calendars so that you see exactly when our fiscal coordinator here is going to process your payments. If you submit a payment on Monday morning, the fiscal coordinator is not going to process that payment. The fiscal coordinator is going to process payments that were entered into the system by 5 p.m. Sunday. So if you have any questions on that, we will have contact information for you, but that's what that calendar is. You would hit enter. We have made the home screen for the providers as easy as possible. We tell you exactly what we expect as a provider that you would do. The first thing that we ask is for you to create a service plan for anyone that has chosen your program. These particular links under task, this is how you as a provider would know that someone has chosen your program. You would click on one of the individuals, and again you see that you have the individual's name. This individual is demo guy, their address, their city, and this is their telephone contact information so that you would have it. You would have the voucher ID number, the date the voucher was issued, the amount assigned on the voucher, and then you would be the service name of the voucher. These are the services that I'm going to give this individual client based on this voucher. And then the service description would be a mini recovery plan that you would be talking about what you're going to do with the client in the time frame that you're given with the amount that you're given. Once you enter that service plan, you can click Save. The system will let you move forward without that service plan, but the system will not let you bill unless you have created a service plan. So as you notice, once you created a service plan, that individual has been removed from your first task. Next, we're going to ask you every 7 days, have you seen Demo Guy? And if you've seen him, you'll click. Did you or anyone else with your agency have any contact with Demo Guy in the last 7 days? This can include face-to-face, phone calls, mail, fax, email, or anything else. We're going to click yes. If you click yes, we're going to know the last date of contact. I'm going to put today, I'm going to put the 4th. How about that? Type of contact, face-to-face, and then any comments. You can put any comments in there. The comment in there is please remember to create a service plan and schedule regular appointments. But any comments that you want to enter into there is appropriate. And you see the link is gone so that we know this second task allows us to know that he's still in your services. And it allows the care coordinator to know. The third task is we're going to ask the providers to bill for services. So we're going to click on Demo Guy, and you'll see that this is the billing records. This is the same screen that you would get if you clicked up here, billing records. You're going to click on Demo Guy. You can also select any client that you have when you click that on the billing link. The name would come up, the ATR ID would come up, the UCI would come up if it's entered, or would you have to enter that again?
It's only if they receive treatment services, which wouldn't be valid anymore.
Everybody's receiving treatment services.
In the case where a treatment service instead of a recovery service is involved, we do require a UCI.
Okay. So if the UCI is not already populated, please populate it again in this screen. The Social Security number of the client, the telephone number of the client, and the address of the client. You would select the voucher that you're billing for because as a provider, you may have more than one voucher for this particular client. There's some information about the voucher. The voucher is still active. The amount that you've already billed would be identified here. The allowable start date for your billing would be here. The amount assigned on the voucher would be here, the amount unused, and the end date. The system does not allow you to bill outside of these date parameters. So your services would have to have been rendered between 10/27 and 11/20. If there's a case where the voucher dates have expired, you would go back and contact your care coordinator. You would enter the service date that you're billing for. I'm going to enter November 15th. You would enter the time. This is very important. A lot of people put the same time for everybody that they're billing. Unless you're able to serve 20 people at once and you're doing a group session, then the times need to be varied, and we do pay attention to that. So the time that you started, the service ended on the same day because you only have 1 hour of service that was assigned to you. The time it ended was 2 p.m. That was 1 hour of service. It would calculate the cost for you. You would create a description of what you've done. We do not accept canned descriptions. We want to know what you've done with that client that week. We don't want any clinical data in the service description, but we do want to be able to identify what progress the client has made in your services, with your services, and or what services did the client receive during this billing period. When you're talking about a service, this service is recovery coaching. The voucher will say recovery support individual. Recovery coaching can encompass a lot of things. So we want to know what happened with that client between the provider and the client that week. Approve. Now this screen here allows you to see for the purposes of being able to track your billing records, it will allow you to track all of your billing records. It'll show you exactly based on color coding where your billing records are in process. So the first is yellow. If it's yellow, it means that you need a fiscal approver to approve it before we even see it. Once the provider's fiscal approver approves it, it turns to purple. So if it's yellow, there's something at the provider agency that still needs to be accomplished. Once it's purple, it's been submitted to our fiscal coordinator. Once it's green, our fiscal coordinator has submitted it to be invoiced. Once it is invoiced, it is in the invoicing stage. Once it's mauve, maybe that's the color, and then the banking transaction is being completed. Once it's the orange color, that means that it's been paid out, and the funds should be received in your bank account once you see that particular color. If there is a light green, it means that our fiscal coordinator rejected it. They could reject it for a number of things. They could reject it because the description that you gave was not appropriate for the services that are included in the voucher. They could have rejected it because something in the service plan was inappropriate. If you get a voucher for $1,000 and you bill for $1,000 on the first day of that voucher, our fiscal coordinator is going to reject that. And then you can reject it as a provider. Maybe you notice that you billed too soon. Maybe you notice that you are trying to bill for a client that you did not, the client that you billed for was not the actual client that you submitted in the system because you chose the wrong voucher. You can reject it in the system, and that would not be submitted to us for processing. But you will be able to see where your billing submission is at all times if you look on this screen. You can also navigate this screen. You can look at vouchers. I only want to see the vouchers that were for the month of October. You could change the dates to the month of October, and the information will come up for the month of October. I only want to see vouchers for Demo Guy. Only vouchers for Demo Guy would come up. So this is a good check and balance way for whoever your fiscal coordinator is to keep track of the funding that's going through, processing through the state of Ohio. Once you've done that, you are done with billing for the client, and we're going to go back to the home page. So as a provider, we've shown you how to go in as a care coordinator and enter a client. We've shown you as a provider, once you receive a client, how to navigate so that you see exactly what that voucher is, the time frame, what services you're intended to perform, and how to bill for that client. As a care coordinator, there are two other GIPRAs that you'll be performing. You'll be performing the intake GIPRA during your original enrollment, but you'll be performing the follow-up and discharge GIPRA. So you would have access to enter GIPRA data for the follow-up and the discharge. You would be able to click here for the discharge, here for the follow-up, here for entering a new discharge. If there's a delinquent, that means that there are windows that we'll be training you on, and those windows are appropriate windows when the GIPRA information can be received. Sometimes clients go outside of those parameters and windows, and that's where you would enter that information. I'm not going to go through that information right now because there's no clients in the GIPRA section, but you'll be trained on that particular portion. That's where you would enter them. So as a care coordinator, this is the link that you'll receive when you enter a client into the system for the first time. And when you're doing that follow-up GIPRA and that discharge GIPRA, you'll be going in as a GIPRA data collector. As a care coordinator, these would be the two buttons that you'll have available to you. You won't have all of these. These are only here because it's my access. As a provider, you would only have this button available to you, so you wouldn't mistakenly click into something else. As a board, let me choose. I didn't have to. Okay. As a board, there are two things that you get to see. You get to see a list of all of the providers. Let me click one. I'm going to click Lorraine. Let's click Start because they're there. And I think it populates only Lorraine. Oh, it doesn't populate anybody anymore. Okay, good. But what you would be able to see under this access is a list of all the ATR approved providers in Stark County, because we clicked Stark County for the board access. You would be able to see a list of providers that are approved in your area, and you would be able to see a list of billing records. So every provider, once we pay them out, you would be able to see the amount that we've paid for every single provider in your board area. And everyone that's affiliated with the board will be able to have access to this button. That will be the only button you will have access to. The administrator button is an internal button here. And the benefit coordinator manager. Each care coordinating agency, as a manager of the agency, you'll be able to see every single voucher or billing that has come through the agency. So as a benefit coordinator manager, when the care coordinator is submitting reimbursement requests, billing requests for the care coordination duties, you would be able to go in here and select them and see them and approve them. Again, you can query dates. You can query individuals that have been approved by, you can query pending, approved by provider, rejected by ODATIS, or on hold. You can see all of the billing statuses. If it's pending, that means that you would need to go in and approve it. And you would go down, verify the information is correct, scroll down to the bottom, and you would click approve. If you reject it, that's when we see rejected by provider on that screen I showed you previously, but you can reject it for a number of internal reasons. You could also delete it, but once you approve it, it goes off your list and there's nothing left to approve. So that's how you navigate the VMS system. We're going to turn off the recorded portion and then we'll open it up for questions.